So with all these videos going back and forth between Jay of Jay's 2 Cents and Steve of Gamers Nexus and Paul from Paul's Hardware and even Kyle trying valiantly to get in on the action, I felt a little bit left out. But I'm not one to just sit on the sidelines and let things pass me by. So I grabbed not only one 2080 Ti, but two 2080 Ti's, and I think it's about time I toss my hat in the ring. Ready to dive into custom water cooling but unclear about what parts you might need? Check out Thermaltake's new M360 Plus RGB kit. Featuring a D5 pump res combo, 16mm hard tube, Pacific C Pro fittings, and the best RGB implementation on the market, the M360 Plus fits all mainstream Intel and AMD sockets and is fully expandable as your system evolves. Check out the link in the video description to learn more. So full disclosure guys, I actually filmed the majority of this video last night, and unfortunately, this little guy right here, this SD card from Lexar, completely shit the bed. This thing is completely corrupted and all of my footage that was on here is lost. So I'm gonna have to try to do a quick recap of what I talked about last night, the stuff that I tried, the equipment that I've used so far, and then I'll kind of catch you guys up as far as where I'm at right now with my rig, what kind of scores I've been posting, and where I hope to get hopefully soon. So initially my goal was going to be just to work with this card, the MSI Duke 2080 Ti, and get on the single card leaderboard for Time Spy Extreme. And I was working on that for a little while, but apparently it's really difficult to climb the single card leaderboard on Time Spy Extreme. And although I did fairly well, I think I got up into the teens, and I'll put a screenshot up right now as far as how well I did. I wasn't really able to get into the top 10 no matter what settings I was adjusting, and I'm really sure that I was fairly power limited at this point. But I do have a Founders Edition card as well, so I popped that one in and tried to then go for top 10 in Time Spy Extreme 2-card setups. The Duke card, which I'll show you in a second because it's actually installed in my rig, comes from the factory with 111 or 12% power limit. I think it's 111. And this just wasn't going to cut it. So what I did was I actually installed the EVGA 2080 Ti XC Ultra BIOS onto the MSI card, increasing the power limit to 130%. This allowed me to get some definitely more significant overclocks and still remain within power and still remain within temperature limits. Sorry about that. Because my airflow was pretty good and I was ramping the fans up to 100%. With the Founders Edition card, I unfortunately could not flash a BIOS to this that would increase the power target beyond what it ships from the factory, which is 123%. So that's what we're working with here. No shunt mods. There's going to be no extreme cooling. We're going to be working with a little bit of exotic cooling, but no extreme cooling, no ice baths, no LN2, no buckets of liquid nitrogen like Jay put up on Twitter the other day. But we're going to be doing what we can with some smaller, less complicated equipment. The first thing that I tried was this little guy right here. This is called an Arctic Air. This is supposed to be like a personal air conditioning unit that you use in like an office setting. You put it on your desk and it blows cool air onto you. There's a couple problems with this though. The first thing is this is an evaporative cooler, so this chamber right here gets filled with water. You could put a little ice in there, and then there are two fans inside that blow air through. The heat is exchanged from the tank to the air, and then it's blown out the other side. So it is blowing out cooler air, but it's not really cold air. And also it is moisturized air. It's actually picking up moisture as it travels across and contacts the cool water inside. So this isn't ideal for cooling PC components. I did try this for a little bit, but it didn't really get me anywhere. And I was afraid that I was going to be doing more harm than good by introducing moisture to the inside of my test setup. So we ditched this pretty quick. The second thing that I did, and honestly probably should have been the first thing I did, was I removed 4 of my 8 memory DIMMs. And I did this just for latency reasons, to try to get some better overclocks out of our memory. Unfortunately, as it stands right now, we're still only limited to 3200 megahertz on this kit. No matter what I do, I can't go any higher. So while that's what the rated speed of the kit is, unfortunately that means we can't push any higher on an overclock for this, so kind of limits our CPU score. But as you guys will see in a second, CPU is not really what we're worried about at this point, and we're definitely GPU bottlenecked as far as this test goes. So let me take the camera off there and go handheld for a minute and show you guys what I have ended up with, and talk a little bit about my my CPU configuration, how fast everything is running, and then we'll try to go a little bit higher on our scores. All right, so here it is. This is our test setup, and right now it is plumbed up, yes, to an AC unit. I've kind of jerry-rigged this so that all the air being exhausted here runs through this ductwork and gets forced into the case. Now initially I actually had this side panel on, and I was trying to keep the cold air in, and then on top, and right now I have the exhaust blocked. But what I wanted to do initially, how I had it set up, was because the side panel was on, I had these taken off, and it was trapping the air in there and then exhausting out the top or exhausting out the back. So it was working okay, but I found that being able to introduce more air with these fans, with the Be Quiet Silent Wings fans, was actually working better for cooling our GPUs, because the GPUs were still running pretty warm, and now with this setup they're actually definitely still within spec. Running right now at about 70 degrees, topping out at about 70 degrees each one. So temperature right now is not our problem. It's definitely power, and there's not very much that I could do to get around that, unfortunately, because I don't have access to the 154% power, 154% power limit BIOS that a couple of the other guys are running. But you can see that I actually have a second power supply hooked up right now, and that's because the power supply that I built this system with is 1000 watts. Now, while 1000 watts is definitely sufficient for a system like this with just one card, and if we're not going any kind of extreme overclocking, we definitely need a second one if we're going to be pushing overclocks on both of our 2080 Ti's, which are installed down there, because the 7980XE that's in here is drawing 500 watts or maybe even more. The cards, when they're overclocked, are drawing 330, 340 watts each, and then we have obviously everything else that's in here that needs power. So 1000 watts is definitely not cutting it, but by introducing a second power supply to run one of the cards all by itself, we eliminate that problem. So let's power this thing up, I guess, and see what we got. So I also got to turn this thing on. And things probably get a little bit loud in here. But let's take a look at the overclocking settings that I'm running. So yeah, sorry things are a little noisy now, but just kind of to show you how things are working in here. The air is plumbed through this duct, enters here, and then because I have these janky router boxes up here, hopefully what that is doing is limiting the exhaust potential of these fans and forcing a lot of the cold air to be exhausted directly out of here, which is where the AIO empties into the radiator. So we're trying to force the cold air through the radiator to keep the CPU cool. And there's also obviously some air coming in and going down this way. This fan is facilitating that, and then this fan is acting as exhaust for the GPUs, because all the GPU fins on the side there are actually, this is where the exhaust happens for these GPUs with these recycling coolers. So this is helping get it out and away from the cards. Okay, so here we are in our BIOS, and we are running the ASUS Prime X299 Deluxe motherboard, which for this purpose is not ideal because it only has 8+4 pin EPS, whereas you wanted 8+8 for maximum power. But to be honest, I don't think this is the limiting factor at this point. Here are the BIOS settings. Sorry for that glare right there. I don't know what I could do to minimize that. But here's what I am running right now. So you can see that I just have it XMP enabled, and that's because, like I said, I can't go any higher than 3200 no matter what settings I tried. So
I figured just leaving it on XMP would be fine. Obviously MCE is off. I have my AVX offsets set to the lowest that I could get them, which is 1. I couldn't go any lower than this on this board. It doesn't let me do 0. So 1 is what we're going to get. And then I have my overclock applied per core, and I'll show you that. So have running at 4.9 gigahertz on the first 2 cores, and then 4.8 on the rest. So this is definitely a very good overclock for this board, and I'm definitely happy with it. I do not think that this is actually what is limiting us at this time, because the CPU scores that I'm getting, as you'll see in a second, are actually over 11,000. So that's definitely in line with some of the higher numbers on the Times by Extreme chart. So not particularly worried about that. As far as voltage goes, CPU is running at 1.37 volts, and I was messing with the DRAM voltage, but again, it didn't really make a difference. I couldn't go any higher, and I mean, auto voltage right now says 1.488, and it does not run at 1.488. So it's running like 1.3, 1.35 generally. So this is fine. And this board's BIOS doesn't really give me as many options as, say, the EVGA X299 Dark BIOS does, which I actually talked to EVGA about, and they are going to be sending one over. So maybe we'll try this again at a different time when that comes in. But for now, we're just going to boot back into Windows, and I'll show you guys what's going on with the graphics cards. So here are our settings. This is the Founders card. We've got plus 1,110 on the memory and plus 160 on the core. A very good overclocking Founders Edition card, but not still. This is the limiting factor in our testing because the MSI card with the 130% power target is able to hit plus 185 on the core and plus 1,190 on the memory, and that's actually giving us a score of 13,799. And somebody has bumped me. I think this guy right here is new because I was number 6 as of last night, and my goal was 14,000 initially. I don't honestly think that I'm going to get there, at least today with this setup that I have. But I bumped Paul, and I am. If I could get up above 13.8, if I could jump up to number 5, I think I'd be super happy, and that's only 24 more points. So that's what we're going to be gunning for. I'm going to run a few more tests, and we'll see how it goes. So I decided to try something a little different. I actually changed the configuration as far as where the AC air was blowing into. Now I have it blowing right up against the cards, keeping them a little bit cooler, and I've been able to get at least slightly higher graphics score out of it. And I've actually done that by just kind of manipulating the MSI card and actually downclocking, or from where I was anyway, the Founders Edition card, because I was getting a lot of artifacting and instability, and I found that it was just coming from this card and not from the MSI card. The MSI card I think still has some headroom. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to take this piece off, and I'm going to got some more flex tubing, so I'm going to take this off. I'm going to replace this piece of cardboard. I'm going to have one opening here and one opening here, and I'm actually going to plumb this back up, and then I'm going to run a tube to this side here to cool the CPU radiator again, because as you can see, we're back to throttling on the CPU. So if we could maintain or increase this a little bit and then bring this back up to 11,000 or so, I think we might have ourselves a winner. Okay, this is getting ridiculous, but I think it might work. I don't even know. I don't know. Let's give it a whirl, and then we'll wrap this video up. So we got up to 13,817, which is our current personal best. And if we pop this open and take a look at the Hall of Fame for 2 cards, so we moved back up to number 6, which is where we were before. But when we got 6 more points to get up to number 5. I don't know if we could do it, but we're gonna give it a couple more tries. Aha! We did it. We got back up into 5th, 13,836. Graphics score of 14,511. CPU score of 10,951. That it's using the following settings. The Founders Edition card is at 1110 memory offset and 155 clock offset. And the MSI Duke card is at a 1215 memory offset and a 195 core offset. So we did it. We got back up. Let's actually go take a look. Let's compare our results online. And let's just go right to the Hall of Fame for 2 cards. Bang! Look at that. Look at that. Look at a handsome guy right there at number 5. BPS Customs, 13,836. Number 5. All right. So obviously there's a ways to go before we get up into this region here. Even the next jump is 800 points, and this is a new entry, so I don't even know what this guy's doing, if he's got, you know, custom loop going on or what. But we are not getting this unless we disassemble our bench, which, let's take a final look at the bench and see how it ended up looking. So we've got our AC unit, our 2 ducts coming out, one feeding right into the GPUs, the other feeding around the side to feed into the CPU. I've got a fan on the VRMs. I've got a fan blowing in, so kind of keeping that cold air that's coming from that duct, keeping it pointed in towards that radiator. And we did it. Oh, and we've got 2 routers on top, keeping the cool air in, so it doesn't exhaust, because we've got some exhaust fans down there. We did it. We did it. Number 5. That was our goal for today. Look at this. Look at this guy. Look at this guy. Look at that guy right there. That's Indiana, or Indy Stro. He is the newest member of our family. Thanks so much, guys, for hanging out with me while I did this ridiculousness. I hope you enjoyed it just a little bit. This video was probably way too long at this point. Yeah, maybe we'll try it again another time, but see you guys later.